in baseball at this point through this portion of the season. I guess you could make the case for the White Sox in the American League, the A's maybe to a certain degree in the American League, but in terms of the National League surprise, it's Washington. I don't know if Atlanta was supposed to be 23 games over 500, maybe not, but in terms of the biggest surprises, Washington was predicted to have the second worst record in baseball. They had the second lowest win total number before the season started. And they are 2 games above 500 and leading the entire Major League Baseball in runs scored. Good for them. Another one in San Francisco this afternoon in their getaway game, and the getaway is back to the East Coast, where they will face over the weekend Seattle, and the Mariners are having a very good season. They are 4 games above 500 and in first place in the American League West. So, Brandon Ayuk spoke again. I got this from Nick. Nick wrote, "First thing, I love the show. Please keep up the NBA talk." Yeah, I like talking about actual real games of note. A second thing is, I'm so tired of the Brandon Ayuk saga. I want nothing to do with him on our team. Even Jaden seems hesitant about having him on the team if you pay close attention to how he talks about it. I don't think that's true. I haven't gotten anything from Jaden on Brandon Ayuk that would suggest that he is hesitant. He might be. I don't think you'd get that from Jaden. So I'd be curious, Nick, as to why you feel that way. He was asked one question about it last week, at OTAs, and I thought the answer was fairly benign. Look, I've suggested that it's very possible. We know very little here. I mean, my lean is that Washington is interested in Brandon Ayuk, but you just don't know the level of interest. It could be we are interested, if he's released, in having our doctors check him out physically and our psychologists check him out mentally. And then we'd be interested in basically a no-risk, all sort of highly incentivized base pay deal so that if it doesn't work out, we can move on very quickly with zero pain. That is something that I think they would be interested in pursuing at the very least. I'd be surprised if they're 100% sure at this point that the meeting with Brandon Ayuk, once he does get released, will produce an absolute yes from the team. I think there's a chance that behind the scenes, they're like, look, we're gonna pursue it, but there are no guarantees, because if we get in front of him and we sniff out straight crazy, we're just not going to do it. Or if we find out that the knee isn't exactly where it should be, we're not going to do it. So let's play the latest video message from Brandon Ayuk. Go ahead, Max. Fire it up.
And another thing, you want to know why they really mad, though? They mad because they stupid. They dumb. They mad that they paid me $50 million in 8 months and they avoided my guarantees for 2027. And I'm about to be on a new team in 2027. They mad at they selves for real. He's acting like they mad at me, but they stupid ass mad at they self.
So, he starts that video with, quote, "and another thing," sort of a continuation of the video that he put out over the weekend. I would bet big money it's not going to be his last thing. I think we may be in for more videos from Brandon Ayuk. This might become a regular part of our discourse, of our conversation, because he may, look, in his own mind, this might be a strategy. So they may continue to come. I do kind of wonder what the recent behavior is rooted in. Like, why all of a sudden the social media postings, why all of a sudden the social media videos? Like, is it a strategy in his mind? Is it anger? because he hasn't been allowed to move on yet? Is it just ramblings from someone who's got some issues, maybe many issues? When he says about the 49ers, and another thing, you know what they are and you know why they really mad? They mad because they stupid. Because they stupid. They dumb. They mad because they paid me $50 million in 8 months and then voided my guarantees for 2027. By the way, he also then said that, he's going to be playing somewhere else in 2027. I think he meant to say he'll be playing somewhere else in 2026. I saw some people react to it saying, oh, he thinks he may not play in 2026. Like somehow the 49ers are going to shut him out, or maybe he's with his $50 million in hand, he can afford to sit out another year. Well, he could afford to sit out the rest of his life if he managed his money well. Yeah, no kidding, Brandon. No kidding, they're mad. No kidding that they feel stupid. Anybody following along with this knows that the 49ers are not thrilled about the contract that they gave you, Brandon Ayuk, in the summer of 2024. You got paid $50 million of a deal that called for eventually $120 million over 4 years, and you gave them nothing on the field for it. 7 games, 25 catches, no touchdowns before the injury. And since the injury, you've allegedly violated your contract by essentially going AWOL on the team when they had the right contractually, based on the reporting, to monitor your knee rehabilitation. Yeah, they're mad. Obviously, they're mad. They feel stupid because there were probably some signs during the contract negotiation that you were lacking in maturity. No S, they're pissed and feel like dummies for giving you that deal. Now, what's interesting is he highlighted this crappy deal that they got when they signed him to a new contract. He didn't need to highlight it for those of us that have been paying attention, but he did it anyway. I mean, this guy literally put out a video reminding everybody that he himself, Brandon Ayuk, provided no value, zero value in return for what the 49ers paid him with the new deal in 2024. He reminded everybody that he himself was an absolute disaster, or part of what's turned out to be a disaster signing for the 49ers, because he's provided nothing for them on the field and he's become a total headache off of it. I mean, I would imagine this is the first piece of communication that the 49ers have read or listened to where they're like, yep, he's right. We're pissed. And we feel like idiots for giving him that deal right now. Now, in reality, that deal in the moment was a good deal given his production at the end of 2023 and where the arrow was pointed, which was up on the player at the end of 2023. You can't predict injuries, especially serious ones. They're part of the game. Now, you can predict behavior, and perhaps they ignored some red flags on behavior because he was so good on the field at the end of 2023. And he was a big part of why they got to the Super Bowl that year. But I wonder what the purpose of this is. Is this a strategy in his mind? Is he just angry that they haven't let him move on? Or is it just, a person who's not totally with it, just rambling? If it's a strategy that he's cooked up in his own mind, it seems like a flawed one. Calling your employer stupid, but also simultaneously highlighting how dumb they were to sign you to a contract extension doesn't seem like good strategy. It doesn't seem that it will result in, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan in particular, maybe ownership, in just saying, oh, we can't put up with these videos anymore. We're gonna get you out of here. We're cutting you. It doesn't seem like that would, calling them stupid will, drive them to release him. Maybe in his own mind he thinks it will, and maybe he'll be right. Who knows? It seems to me, though, that the 49ers are more of a dig heels into ground organization deeper. And then, if it is strategy, do you really want to remind teams that might be interested in how badly it worked out for your current team when they signed you to a contract extension? Because that's what he just did. Not that we haven't been following along, but for those that aren't following along, he just reminded everybody how stupid it was for the 49ers to sign him. And then I would also just add, does it ever really help to publicly slam the team you're under contract for? Some teams that may be interested may look at that and say, yeah, that's going to be us one day. That's going to be us that he's calling stupid on a video one day if it doesn't work out. So, look, if it's strategy that he's, formulated, I think it's flawed. Who knows? Maybe they'll, succumb to it. Maybe they'll say, we can't take it anymore. He needs to show up for camp. Will he have the stones to show up for camp, and force their hand to a certain degree, especially as it relates to his roster standing, which right now he's on the reserved left squad list? The strategy seems flawed to me. It could be that he's just really upset that they haven't released him yet. And once we got past June 1st, he thought he'd be released. He thought he'd be sitting down with Washington to work something out. But, if he's just upset and angry, it's a reflection of zero self-awareness for him. Like, all he's got to do is be aware of the fact that he ghosted the team enough so that they were able, in unprecedented fashion, to void millions of dollars of guaranteed money from his contract. Yeah, he's got $50 million. I mean, they had to pay him that. There was $23 to $25 million in a signing bonus, and then they paid him for 24. A lot of 24 and 25. I think that the best bet is these are just ramblings from somebody who either needs some help or certainly needs good advice from somebody that he's willing to listen to. Because I think the best advice would be for him to really focus on making it very clear right now that the only thing in his brain is football. That he impresses upon everybody, his current team and any other teams that might be interested, that he is physically ready to play football. He wants to make it very clear that his only focus is football, and that he very much can't wait to get back out onto the field because he's missed it so much. That would be a message that would be more in line with what somebody might refer to as mature and professional, and might be more advantageous for him. Look, some of you may say this is the only way they're going to get rid of him. I think the only way they're going to get rid of him, and perhaps they would have done it already had he shown up for even the voluntary OTAs. But apparently football isn't as much on his mind, and affecting his current status so that he can be in position to play football sooner rather than later isn't something that he's really contemplated much. That would be a concern. Because if he were really focused on that, he would have shown up for OTAs every single day. Force their hand on the reserved left squad list. Force their hand on whether or not they wanted questions every day about what's Brandon up to? What's he look like? What's he doing? He should show up and say, I'm ready to play for you guys. Look at the shape I'm in. Look at my knee. I am a pro's pro, and I got myself ready to play football, and I am ready to play football. But that's not what we've heard from him. I think, this latest video, it doesn't change my mind. I am still in the same spot where I've been. And that is, I don't have enough information about what actually happened. And then I don't know what the relationship is with Adam Peters. And I don't know what they'll learn when they sit down with him. Look, there has to be very clearly, number one, no trade. I mean, that at this point certainly would appear on the outside looking in to be really foolish. If anybody gives up any compensation for him and his contract currently, the only way you pursue this is if he is cut, that contract is shredded, and you have a chance to sit down with him. You have a chance to medically check him, both from a physical knee standpoint and from a mental stability standpoint. And you feel like the juice is worth the squeeze. And by the way, the juice is you think you're going to get the player from 2023. The squeeze has to be no more than a base salary that's very low compared to what it's been for him. You know, we're talking about, 8, 9, 10, $11 million, which only gets paid out as you go. You don't pay that up front. This would be a no guaranteed money deal. And then you highly incentivize the deal if he performs, and you may have some performance, milestones in there, or, deliverables that include behavior. And it's all for him, right there, but he's got to behave and he's got to perform on the field. That's the only way you can do something with this guy. And I can't tell you right now whether or not he's going to physically be cleared or mentally be cleared. And I don't know what their true relationship is. I do know this, that before the 2023 or before the 2024 offseason, all of the reporting about what Brandon Ayuk was is positive. Very good player, getting better, a real plus on this offense, a critical component of this offense, great with teammates, great in the locker room. Nothing about Ayuk until the summer of 2024, when some of that immaturity that we've now seen over and over again started to become something that people recognized, from demanding trades isn't necessarily immature, but certainly the way he did it, the way he released that video that Jaden had sent him, his very good friend from Arizona State, in confidence, very much so, because that was proprietary to Washington, that piece of video, and he put it out there. Judgment at this point is limited. We can say that for sure about Brandon Ayuk. Yeah, he got $50 million, but there was another $70 million that was out there for him to get. And right now he's got no chance to get that. Look, it's just the way that the beast works in sports. When you sign one of these contract extensions, there is a lot that's guaranteed. And once it's guaranteed, if you aren't professional and you don't intend on being professional, and the $50 million that they've paid you is enough, and it would be enough for most people, and you've kind of, you don't want to give the effort, you don't want to live up to the contract, you don't want to exceed the contract. My experience, and I bet the experience of many of you, is that when you sign a deal, if you're a true pro, you want the person that signed you to that deal to feel at the end of it like they got a great deal, like you exceeded their expectations. You exceeded what the deliverables were for that contract. Because you know what? There's another one after that. And you want people to feel that way. Most professional adults want people to feel that way. They don't want to feel like the employer that paid them that deal is idiotic after just 2 years of the deal, and stupid and mad because they did it, and obviously have great regret in doing it. It's probably not what you want to highlight in your latest message that the team that signed you and gave you all of that upfront money and 2024 money feels like they got absolutely robbed by giving you that money. It's probably not something that you really want to emphasize as much, unless you're immature and you're not very professional, which I think he is certainly proving he isn't with every single message that he puts out. Or he's just, like I've said, so limited he doesn't even understand what he's doing. At the same time, maybe it'll work for him. Maybe the 49ers will say, this guy, my God, enough of him. Let's move on. Maybe they'll do that. Kyle Shanahan just has never struck me as the kind of person that you can call stupid, and then he's going to give you what you want. But maybe the owner feels differently because it's ultimately, his decision. It'll be York's decision ultimately, unless he's just going to rely on Lynch and Shanahan. All right, here we go again. The latest from Brandon Ayuk, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Is this the disqualifier for you if you were still hanging in there on the possibility? Your reaction to his latest video. Yeah, we're going to talk about games. We're going to talk about real stuff. I've got some thoughts on tonight's game for sure. We also have some interesting sound from Trey Young to play for you on the show today. A show that you can hear right here on the Team 980. You can also hear it and stream it on the team980.com or by downloading the Odyssey app where you can listen to it whenever you want, wherever you are. You can watch this show as well on the Team 980's YouTube channel. If you watch it on the YouTube channel, do us a favor. It's really helpful for us if you hit the subscribe button and you hit the like button. So somebody sent me a text during the break just to say, just know that of the $50 million that they paid him, 20 million of it was insured for the 49ers. So the hurt to them isn't exactly what he believes the hurt will be. Okay, fine. They're still out of pocket the 50 million that they gave him in not just a signing bonus, but then in the 2024 salary because he was on the team in 2024 and he was injured. I don't think they started voiding until 25 or in 26. Maybe 26 and beyond is voided. But it is a good point, and I appreciate the information. Teams do have the ability to go out and insure some of these massive contracts, and it seems like it may have paid out. I don't know what the premium is on insuring $20 million of a contract, but it was worth it in this case for the team. All right, you've heard Brandon Ayuk, his latest video. Why don't you play it again, Max, just for everybody if they're just tuning in? This was Brandon Ayuk's latest video message from yesterday.
And another thing, you want to know why they really mad, though? They mad because they stupid. They dumb. They mad that they paid me $50 million in 8 months and then voided my guarantees for 2027. And I'm about to be on a new team in 2027. They mad at themselves for real. He's acting like they mad at me, but they stupid ass mad at themselves.
This came, by the way, the day after he called them little female dogs and little ass boys. He clearly doesn't like them. That he's made very clear. But look, summing up my reaction to this video. Well, no, kidding, Brandon. They're mad about signing you to that deal. You gave them nothing back, and you become a total headache. You gave him nothing back on the field, and you become a total headache off of it. I'm not sure why he'd want to highlight the fact that the deal he got was a terrible deal because he wasn't able to perform for that deal. He provided literally no value. There are some people that get off on, I got 50 million and didn't have to do anything. That's not exactly a professional approach. They gave him this contract, and he didn't even have the professional courtesy or even personal courtesy when somebody gives you generational wealth to show up at a minimum of, I think it was 1 to 2 times a month to get him to look at the knee because they had the right to do that contractually. Crazy. Look, there's parts of this story we don't know. I concede that point. Understood. What we do know is that he had $120 million in aggregate contract value. $77 million of it was guaranteed when he signed that extension in 2024. And they've been able to void somewhere between 27 and 40 million of it. That number is still not totally determined. Even on Spot Track, it just says, voided guaranteed money for 2026 and beyond. I don't know what that number is. I've heard 27. I've heard 39. So whatever it is, he flushed that down the toilet for a minimal commitment, a minimal professional extension of courtesy. And that's where, you get into, look, the character of this person. And maybe it's less to do with character and more to do with intellect and limitations there. I don't know because I don't know the player. I'm throwing out all of the possibilities. But this guy has done nothing in his, communication via social media to say, look at me. I'm in shape and I'm ready to play football and I can't wait to get back out onto the field. It's all, look at me, the aggrieved. Because, and by the way, look at me, the guy who got 50 million and pissed him off, giving nothing to them in return. I don't think that's a very good strategy, but maybe it'll work out for him. Who knows? 301-230-0980. Where are you on him now? I mean, this is going to be, I have a feeling, a regular occurrence where he puts something out. And by the way, it's June 10th. You know, they had an OTA day, their last one. They've got mini camp next week. Told you guys a million times, you're not learning anything from these summer days, including training camp, unless there's real news. Hopefully not bad news, like injury news. So this is a player that I think we all believe they do have some interest in. If he becomes available, he's going to become available. Let's start with Billy and Chantilly. Billy, go ahead.
Kevin, I can't believe this conversation is out of control. It's rock bottom.
For whom?
How in God's name would we ever bring this guy into the organization?
It's certainly not an
unreasonable
unreasonable
take. Full-on cuckoo bird.
Yeah, it's not an unreasonable take.
Cuckoo bird.
Yeah.
He'll be running around in a straitjacket. I think I said that to you a month ago.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are a lot of possibilities. He could be crazy. He could be dumb. He could literally, be just incredibly unprofessional. Somebody gives you $50 million and you won't show up to the facility to get them to look at your knee. What does that say about his character? So that's a part of it. Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities here. I don't know him, but, we've got some information out there to be able to at least, throw out some theories. But go ahead.
He never rehabbed from his injury. That's the bottom line. If you boil it all down.
I don't know that. How do you know that?
Never. If a professional athlete rehabs from his injury, he's doing that for one reason. He's a professional athlete. He's getting paid. That means
how do you know he didn't rehab from the injury, though?
Because he never went and got the money that he should have got paid to rehab.
Well,
if you rehab the injury, you get paid.
You know what?
You
it is something I haven't considered.
Give me my money.
It's something I haven't considered that he didn't rehab. The knee's in terrible shape, and he didn't want that disclosed.
He never rehabbed.
Yeah, we don't know that. Billy speaks with a level of certainty that makes you believe that he's got information. We've been hearing this from Billy for years. We don't know that he didn't rehab, but I will acknowledge that you've thrown into the mix a possibility that kept him from going in and having his knee checked because he decided just to walk around on a torn up knee and not get it fixed. I do think it was surgically repaired. I do think that there's reporting on the surgery. So I don't think he just left the field that day and did nothing about it. But
professional athletes get paid to rehab. When they rehab, they want their money.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to go 17-0 this year, Kevin. It's going to be a hell of a year. Can't wait for September.
See ya. I hope you're right. Let's go to Terrell in Baltimore. Go ahead.
Hey, Coach. Yeah, it's Terrell. And listen, I don't think we should be quick to calling people cuckoo or crazy. We don't know all of the elements to the story, like you said. And have you ever talked to someone who's younger than you?
We're suggesting it's a possibility.
The prior guy did, and I'm saying, have you ever? I got teenage and young kids that are 20 years old, and talking to them, sometimes I'm wondering if I even understand the English language, the way they process and do things. I'm like, that's fair. Not how I would at all. And maybe Brandon is just operating at a different place, but it's not necessarily crazy. I know for me, 26, 27, $30 million is a number that I would not.
Be very immature for the age. Sure.
Totally. I wouldn't give away that amount of money because I don't know if I'll ever see that on the table. But maybe this guy thinking that he's betting on himself. There's a term in the culture now talking about standing on business, standing 10 toes down. Maybe he is betting on himself and he didn't want to put another penny of profit in the 49ers bucket under his name. I remember when Trent Williams was here and things got bad, he wasn't going to do anything else for this organization. And maybe, just maybe, without us knowing all of the details, Brandon said, I'm not doing it another minute, another meeting, another locker room, another anything for this franchise because of how he feels he was egregiously treated. And if that is the case, then maybe he, it's not so crazy. Again, Myles Garrett was like, I'm not going to play for the Browns again. They threw a bunch of money at him. He was like, maybe they're not so bad. Maybe Brandon was like, you know what? I'm not doing that. I don't care what it is. However money, he gave the money back told the Players Association, no, don't fight for me. Give the money back. I don't want them to owe me anything, and I'm out of here. Maybe that's what he's doing, and it's not crazy. It's crazy to us because we wouldn't give up that type of money, but maybe to him, with $50 million in his bank, he's thinking, nope.
That's fine. The
I'm not
process, though, in which he is going through right now, I don't think anybody with any level of adult experience would deem it to be professional. This isn't, a professional approach. Now, it may be the approach that he thinks in his own mind will work and will get him released. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I would probably guess it won't. But you bring up something, and I've talked about this. It could just be that he's one of those very young, immature 28-year-olds, 27-year-olds who, is, it could obviously be that. Thanks, Terrell. Appreciate it. Let's go to Q in DC. Q, go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Kevin? How you doing?
Hey, Q.
Firstly, let me get this out of the way. I really love your show. I don't do any of these talk shows or give a lot of these guys credence, but I really, really appreciate you, Kevin, and how you stay measured in a lot of your commentary. Now,
thank you, Q.
Going to the Brandon Ayuk, not but, I never said
okay.
but. Let's go to the Brandon Ayuk situation. Although I did say, now I'm saying although, you're measured, but Kevin, this time I see that I believe you're leaning a little on the organization side. And the reasons why I said that is we have historical facts that this organization is flawed. This isn't the first time that we've heard reports of tough contract negotiations and how other players felt disrespected by this organization. I really struggle with
who are the other players? I mean, I'm not suggesting that you're wrong, and I know that they have a reputation of being tough. But give me the other players where it's even approached something like this.
Deebo Samuels, as well as Brian Cohn's report yesterday, and I can't recall the young man's name, who was a future star for them, literally walked off the field and said, I'm done with this organization.
Who's that?
Brian Cohn's,
Greg Cohn's on Beach and Finley yesterday. He was talking about Devondre Campbell, I believe.
Wait,
hold on.
Sir. That's exactly
who's Bryant Cohn? Did he play on which team?
Grant Cohn, he's a reporter for the Niners.
There you go. There he is. Grant Cohn, I'm sorry. He corrected me. Now, there's this.
But what? Okay, this was a reporter who said this. What player?
Yesterday
was a really good player that they let walk.
Devondre Campbell
walked out. Who?
Devondre Campbell. Campbell.
Got it.
He walked off based on the organization tension. And let me just get through it, Kevin. So this is where I struggle, right? John Lynch comes out in December, say, hey, this person has played this last down for us, right? You already made your stance. You say we don't want anything to do with you, so let me go. There's also a report after that George Kittle contradicted these allegations that he did not show up for rehab. He said, I was at the gym seeing Brandon Ayuk staying off to himself, but because of who I am, I went in there and had conversation with him. This was reported on the podcast.
Yeah, in the preseason portion of last year. Yeah, no, I've read that.
There we go.
Yeah. Right, but then he stopped. But then he stopped reporting. Then he stopped coming.
But there was
and look, something could have happened. I've said a million times. There's a lot about this we don't know. But let me just back up for a moment because I don't honestly view the 49ers from afar as, one of these organizations that people have like just continuing problems with. What you just suggested, yes, there were some issues with Samuels, but the normal run-of-the-mill stuff, contract disagreements, not reporting, etc. The other Devondre Campbell thing I was unfamiliar with. I appreciate that. Trent Williams has stuck it out with them, and they've basically kept all of their truly great players. I know that there are players, I'm sure, in that organization that think fondly of it. And by the way, it's an excellent organization in terms of the results. They've got a very good head coach. He is, he certainly is fond of himself. We know that from his time here. But I only know what we know for sure, and that is that they were able to void in unprecedented fashion tens of millions of dollars in guaranteed money from his contract. And the player, the player's agent, the player's representation, and the union has stayed silent on that from what we know. Now, it could be that they're getting their ducks in a row and they're going to go after the money. But it is unprecedented to void that much money from a deal, and unprecedented that something like that would happen and the union wouldn't be immediately there on your behalf, because that's the last thing they want to see happen. So that's the one thing we know for sure. And that does not make him look good. It makes him look guilty, or it makes him look like he did violate the contract. So, Q, good call, though. But that's the one thing we know. As far as me leaning organization, yeah, more often than not, you're right. I do lean more organization from this in a lot of situations. Not every situation, but in this one, I have a feeling, a gut, based on what I just described, that, they feel like they were taken to the cleaners a little bit, that they wanted the player to come in and live up to what they had paid him $50 million to live up to, which was to rehab the proper way and for them to be able to monitor the rehab. They paid him $50 million. He made that very clear. Didn't work out for the team. All right. Stay on hold. Lap, JYD, Ian, Kevin, Bill, Athen. Got a phone line open if you want to weigh in on the latest Brandon Ayuk video. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980 and the team980.com. I was reminded during the break from a friend of mine, the Devondre Campbell saga in San Francisco. He's the guy that walked off the field during a game and quit. So I don't know what you do with that. If that's the example, the guy Bryant Cohn, is that his name? Bryant Cohn is using for what is it? Sorry.
Grant Cohn.
Grant Cohn is using. So for those of you that don't remember, Campbell signed a 1-year deal with the 49ers in 24. He's when Dre Greenlaw got hurt, he started 12 of the team's first 13 games, played well. Greenlaw returned in week 15 against the Rams. Campbell was then a reserve on the field that day. Greenlaw got hurt again. Another linebacker got hurt. When the team went to put Campbell into the game, he refused and walked off the field to the locker room. 49ers lost the game, and Campbell was roundly criticized heavily by teammates, including George Kittle, including Ward, including others. And ultimately, he was suspended for the rest of the season and has not played in the NFL since. So not the best example to use for the 49ers being a difficult organization, even for good players. And he was an okay player. He had a good season with Green Bay in 2021. So just wanted to clear that up. I remember the incident. I didn't remember in the moment that it was Devondre Campbell. But I do remember when a player for the 49ers walked off the field and refused to play, quit in the Apparently, we had some technical difficulties on that last segment. I just wanted to make sure everybody heard what I said, and that is the Devondre Campbell situation in San Francisco. If that's being used as kind of an indication that the 49ers are kind of tough to deal with, he walked off the field in a game and quit in the middle of a football game in week 15 of 2024. Dre Greenlaw was back for his first game, and Campbell was relegated to a reserve role. Greenlaw got hurt again. They actually had another injury at linebacker as well. He was asked to go into the game, and he refused to go into the game and walked off the field and went into the locker room. The 49ers lost that game, and Campbell was criticized heavily by coaches, teammates, and anybody that watched it, and was eventually suspended and has not been signed by anybody else. That may be one of those things, even if you've got some talent. He was okay. He was not a great player. He was in 2021, that one season in Green Bay. But quitting is not a good thing to do. He was not signed last year by anybody. All right, back to the phone lines, responding and reacting to Brandon Ayuk's latest video. Let's go to our guy Kevin in DC. Kevin, go ahead.
Hey, buddy, how you doing? Thank
What's
you
up,
for having me. Listen, I two things. I don't really believe that the Commanders have any real interest in Brandon Ayuk, simply because if they were, there would already be some preventive maintenance happening.
What
and
do you
because
mean?
He's continually,
What do you mean?
What I mean is somebody
maintenance?
would be talking to him. I believe somebody would be talking to him saying, man, listen, just cool, get off Instagram.
They're not allowed to,
man,
technically. He's under contract, so they can't be risk tampering.
Okay. And secondly, we need Jaden Daniels to be the best football player on the field. We also need him to be a high-level leader for the team. We do not need him splitting time being a caregiver because of the dynamics of the relationship. And I don't think they would risk that. He needs a caregiver and a coach. Like some people need a Bible and a therapist. He needs that.
Kev, I've discussed that before about just the dynamic of, like, even if he came in and was healthy and ready and fine and none of this other stuff was going on, but he was on a prove-it deal, to your point, would you want Jaden, with the relationship that he at least did have at one point when they were in college at Arizona State now, many years ago now, would you want him feeling like he had to deliver or over-deliver for Brandon Ayuk so that he could get the next big deal? So I hear your point. It's a good one. And then beyond that, if he comes in with, red flags all over him, which he will, wherever he lands, is Jaden going to feel like, hey, like you use the word caregiver, it's not a bad word to use, in addition to all of the other things he's got to be focused on? I mean, that should be, I'm sure, part of the calculus. Now, Jaden strikes me as a person who, is going to play football and do what's in the best interest of the team, because that's in the best interest of himself as well. But yeah, if there's any thought that Jaden's going to have to kind of bend a little bit to help out his friend, you wouldn't want that for sure. Good call, Kevin. Appreciate that. Let's go to Ian, who's been on hold for a while. Ian, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a perfect transition. I think the previous caller really brought up an astute point, and it makes me question Jaden Daniels as a person and as a friend. You said they've been friends from back in the day of Arizona State. I mean, when Jaden talked about him recently, he's like, that's my friend.
What else do you want him to say publicly? What else do you want him to say publicly? We don't know exactly what their relationship is in this moment.
Sure. But what I do know is that Brandon Ayuk feels so comfortable putting on a Washington Commanders hat and feels like he's going to be on that team. He must have some type of thought process, assurance, some type of thing that would make him feel comfortable, not only going on his stupid diatribes, but putting on the team of a hat of a team that he thinks he's going to be on. Why is he even linked to Washington? It's because of Jaden Daniels, not because of Adam Peters. It's because of that relationship.
Well, no, I think it's both. I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's maybe a little bit more Jaden, but a lot of it is Adam Peters. Adam Peters is the one that knows him professionally.
Sure, but if that's the case, I would think that Adam Peters, based on how Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch to react, would want nothing to do with it. If he's been so obnoxious and gotten his voided money from San Francisco, I can't imagine the subordinate assistant GM is like, oh, you were terrible to my former boss and former colleague. I can't wait to sign you. That process flow doesn't make sense.
All of that makes sense is if what you're saying is true and there's nothing else to the story. I mean, that's the part we just don't know. We don't know where the fracture definitely happened. We don't know that, hey, this guy is immature. He may not be the brightest bulb on the bush, but he's really, really good, and he's really just right now disenchanted and has his heels dug in. They have their heels dug in, and he just needs a change of scenery. Because the one thing I will point out, Ian, again, is that prior to 2024, and I know his career was pretty short at that point, but there was no indication that this guy was a diva. There was no indication that this guy was a problem. In fact, all of the reporting is the opposite of that. It was that we never saw this coming from him. So there may be something we're missing from this.
You could say the same thing about Antonio Brown. He was fine until he wasn't fine.
Well, I don't remember the early years of Antonio Brown, so I can't speak to that. I don't remember. I just remember him being really, really good.
There's a joke that somebody had on Twitter that made me laugh out loud, which was, how did he get CTE from a knee injury? And that's what it seems like. You're right. I had never heard anything negative or, frankly, heard anything about Brandon Ayuk until everything broke during the contract negotiation and then everything after that. He was just a guy, and then all of a sudden he's become a daily topic. And you're right. I think this will continue every day until he's released. Like, he's just trying to be as disruptive as possible. And in fact, like your previous caller said, somebody should, if it's Jane Daniels or whomever, be like, hey, just don't say anything, go to the place, get released, and then start over. But he doesn't do that.
I can tell you this. My guess is, after yesterday in particular with the 49ers, really the two videos in combination, I mean, if I know anything about the Shanahans, is you don't threaten them. You don't put them into that position, because they are fighters, and they absolutely, in this case, he made the point. I mean, he's the one that highlighted how terrible this deal was for the team. I mean, I don't think he did himself any favors with anybody paying attention in sort of presenting it the way he presented it. But, at this point, I would be surprised if they weren't being petty, if they weren't being vindictive. Now they might be into vindictive mode. And even if they think there is literally no chance in hell they're going to get a pick for him, they're going to bleed this thing out. And I think from their standpoint, they'd be best to not address anything publicly. When they get asked about it when training camp begins, we're not talking about him, especially if he's not there. We're not talking about anybody that's not here. And if he doesn't show up for that first day of training camp, assuming that he's still on the reserve, left team list, I mean, that is also, in addition to the bad judgment, then you've got, man, is the dude a coward? Because you got to show up. You got to force their hand. You got to be there. And by the way, you got to be there in shape, ready to play. That's what you got to be there ready to do.
Yeah, and I never thought about what your previous callers said, where did he even rehab the knee properly? Because if he did, he could have just showed up and gotten more money. And this notion that he's so mad at the Niners, well, why'd you sign their deal?
No, Billy brought up, actually, for the first time in a long time, a point that was an interesting one, because I had not considered the fact that maybe the reason he didn't go to have the 49ers check out the knee is it wasn't being rehabbed properly. With that said, there are, reports, you can go find them, that he was on the field running around in the preseason last year, and looking like he felt like he was ready to play. So there's that too. So again, Ben said it great the other day when he said, there's literally been no reporting on this story. None. All we have now is him. And we've got what happened with the contract. That is it. There's been no real reporting. Even Rappaport from the other day, I don't really feel like that was a report necessarily. I think it was just one of those things where, it's obvious that no team really wants to trade for him. They'd all prefer, if they're going to have him on their team, to sign him after he's released. Thank you, Ian. Let's go to Bill in Fairfax. Bill, go ahead. Bill, are you there? No, Bill. Put Athen on. Athen, go ahead.
I would just say I don't know if this guy has any brain cells left, because does he understand that he's auditioning for every team out there, whether he's on Instagram or not? I mean, I just don't know of any adult that's mature at all that would do anything like this. And then he's going on there and antagonizing them about all the money they paid him and all the other belt to ass or whatever else he's saying. Yeah. He's just showing all the teams, don't come near me. This is how deranged my mind is, and he's not going to get it resolved any sooner by antagonizing the team on social media. That's why we just have to stay clear of it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm missing the strategic value of what he's doing, but he literally put out a video yesterday that reminded anybody or informed anybody that wasn't paying attention that he himself was a terrible deal for the 49ers because he provided no value for $50 million. Like, he literally fleeced the team because he was so unproductive. Now, the unproductive nature of it was an injury, but it's not necessarily, a strategy to remind everybody that the team that gave you $50 million, you fleeced because you provided no value in return. He's highlighting two things at once: how pissed off they are, and probably how silly they feel, although really they don't need to be silly. The dude was a really good player at the end of 2023. I'm sure they wanted him back on the team. He was a big reason why they ended up being in the Super Bowl, that year. I mean, he wasn't the only reason. They have really good players. If with Kittle and McCaffrey and Debo that year, and but Ayuk was really good that year, really good. And that's like, if he were just okay and he got an inflated deal, this would be not even a conversation, because no one would be interested in taking somebody who's behaving this way. What's out there is the last time we saw him play, real football at the end of 2023, and he was putting scare into defenses. And Washington needs a player like that, or another player like that. What else happened?
Yeah, the only thing he's doing now is mentally scaring people with the way he's acting. And again, the 49ers just have to chalk it up. Again, you could say you hired the wrong person, promoted the wrong person, but I mean, he's got to go, and they need to wash their hands of it. He's going to become somebody else's problem, because this just isn't normal.
But from a competitive advantage, the 49ers, again, I've said this many times, if I were a fan of the 49ers, I would not want to give Washington, a player with his talent, plenty of time to get himself ready for the regular season. I would not want to do that if I didn't have to do that. And then on top of that, probably the feeling of, this guy's a first-rate a-hole, and he took $50 million from us, gave us nothing back, and now He's calling us dum-dums in public. Like, not maybe it's a strategy that'll work, but I know the Shanahans a little bit. It doesn't seem to me, I can only imagine the level of red face that Mike has right now in viewing this from the outside looking in. Thank you, Affin. 301-230-0980. We'll do this for another segment. Brandon Ayuk, if you missed it, we'll play it for you again when we come back. Another video, this one's shorter, but really going after the 49ers, simultaneously highlighting not the best about himself either. But what is your reaction to it? Are you out finally if you were still hanging on Brandon Ayuk? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. I do want you to know that if you've got any issues with your HVAC system, give Foley Mechanical a call. We were having issues now 7-8 months ago. We called Foley Mechanical. We actually called Dan Foley himself. He's great. He came out, directly dealt with my wife and I, and they fixed the problem that we had. He owns 100% of the company. It's not a franchise. It's not, owned by a private equity firm. He controls the quality start to finish, including the people he hires and the equipment he brings on. His team is professional. They are really smart and very skilled. Foley Mechanical is a full-service heating and air conditioning, hot water, and boilers company, and they're the go-to for older homes with radiator heat in the DMV. That is a real specialty. They work across the DMV, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and they proudly install Amana HVAC equipment. If your system needs help or you just want it done right, call Dan Foley at Foley Mechanical or go to FoleyMechanical.com and mention that I sent you.
And another thing, you want to know why they really mad, though? They mad because they stupid. They dumb. They mad that they pay me $50 million in 8 months and they avoided my guarantees for 2027. And I'm about to be on a new team in 2027. They mad at they selves for real. He's acting like they mad at me, but they stupid ass mad at they self.
That was Brandon Ayuk's latest message. Phone lines 301-230-0980. If you're on hold, I'll get to you. You know, I was thinking that, and I know that I've already said this, but I want to emphasize it today. There's a lot to wonder about when it comes to this Ayuk situation. There's obviously a lot that we don't know. But the thing that we don't know that I'd like to know, and I think it would benefit him for people to know, is give us some information, give us a few videos that indicate that you're actually interested in playing football again. Because nothing over the last week has been about playing football again. Nothing. That would benefit him. You know, tell us that and show us that you're healthy after basically missing the last or the better part of the last 2 seasons. Show us you're in shape. Tell us how badly you can't wait to get back out onto the field. You know, not in a prediction, mode of I'm going to tear up the league. Whoever gets me, you're going to get, 100 catches and 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns. But instead of this, this parade of videos slamming your current employer, which you want desperately to be your former employer, show the teams that, and the fan bases of the teams like ours that, apparently are in the hunt to sign you, that you actually are ready to play football, that you're physically ready to play, that you're motivated to play. Because I'll tell you what, a couple more videos like the last 2 where nothing about football is part of his message is, getting now close to pretty much everybody passing. And then he's into that mode of, needing to do, a second chance, give me a second chance circuit, in the 2027 offseason or sometime during the 2026 season. Because he's probably getting dangerously close to that, where people are like, yeah, I mean, you're right. They paid you $50 million and you couldn't even rehab, or you couldn't even show them that you were rehabbing. Not very professional, not very courteous. And you've shared nothing with us about your desire to play football. I mean, I'd feel much better about this as a fan of our team if the videos he was posting were workout videos. I mean, I'm not a big fan of those typically, but given that he had a serious injury, even posting something from, his surgeon or somebody saying 100%, I'm motivated, I can't wait to get back out onto the field. And then, by the way, when training camp begins in, the Bay Area for the 49ers, if he's still on that roster, showing up in incredible shape with incredible motivation, and keeping your mouth shut about the past. We haven't seen much of that. We haven't seen any of that. Let's go to DC. DC, go ahead.
Great day, Kevin. How are you?
How are you, DC? What's up, man?
Man, I'm excellent. It's been a minute. I tried to call in after game 1 and speak on Wemby. If he's so dominant on the defensive end and he keeps his body or he stays near the paint, he should do that on the offensive end, and this will be a 7-game series. But
well, he had a good offensive game in game 3, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, but he got a lot more lobs and stuff because he was playing closer to the basket. He does start out there.
I got something on Wemby that I want to talk about when we get to the NBA, and we'll probably do it starting in the next segment. That I thought about after reading something last night that I had not thought about before, as it relates to, playing closer to the basket, and I'll talk about that in about 20 minutes. But go ahead.
it puts big pressure on the defense, just like he puts big pressure on the offense because he's 7'5". You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That rim is, and he's not. Carl Anthony Towns isn't really having to work with him out there like that. He's getting a little break.
Well, I'll give you a hint. I think there's a chance that he just doesn't view himself as a 5. He doesn't view himself as a center. He views himself as a forward.
I definitely, I can see that. I can see that.
All right, let's stick with the Ayuk subject. Go ahead.
Yeah, my apologies, but
That's
I'm
all right.
glad. Yeah, I want to talk to you about that. So we're saying that Brandon Ayuk, whatever, has an issue or whatever, but we look at it like this: he gave the money back. The manager GM said he's not going to play here. So who's really?
Well, he didn't give the money back. The team didn't give it to him. They voided it.
Yeah, he's not fighting. Yeah. He's not fighting or anything for it. So
he's bragging that he got paid $50 million for doing nothing.
Well, that's essentially what happened. There was a contract issue there before. What I see them doing is they rule with ridicule and antagonism. And some people's response to ridicule and antagonism isn't the same as everybody else's. We know as athletes.
Wait, you're saying his ridicule and antagonism from the last few days?
Well, this is, but I'm saying as the team, for a guy to walk off the field and he had been playing for you, some people came back hurt. You might have known they weren't 100. All of that's hypothetical. But what I'm saying is the Shanahans, I don't hear any other coaches or GMs having these many problems with players. Now, we hear about contract issues. Even George Kittle had a contract issue with them. It's been multiple players.
These issues with the Deebo Samuel's issue, it was a conventional run-of-the-mill contract situation. The Devondre Campbell situation, I just laid it out for you. The dude quit on the team. His teammates were incensed. His teammates roundly criticized him, including the best players on the team. And as far as this situation, we just don't know enough about it. I'm not subscribing to the 49ers have all of these problems with players all the time to a level that no other team has.
From what I'm seeing, the walking off the field, contract issues, veterans, people that's been on your team for years that you've drafted. But this is what I want to ask you, Kevin.
Yeah.
I hire you the voice, right? I hire you to MC my event. You tell me, no, you don't want to do it. You give me the money back. But I'm like, no, I still want you to come. Who's the one that really sounds off there? Because you already gave me the money back. You told me you don't want to play for me. And I was apprehensive, like, yeah, I heard you were the second best voice in the area that I wanted to use for my kid's graduation to MC.
I'm not really following the analogy, but let me just say that if you asked me to MC an event and I committed to you that I would do it, I would do it.
Okay, but what if something came up and you gave me the money back?
Well, if something came up, like something legitimately, like an emergency, a family issue, or sickness or whatever, I would apologize profusely and I would give you the money back that you had given me, and I would help you, and then I would try to help find somebody that was, that could do it in my stead, and tell you that next year I'll commit to next year. That's how I would handle it.
Okay. Well, he's committed to another team because the GM said he didn't want him. Your caller earlier explained that way back in December they said he's not going to play for them. So
well, yeah, because they hadn't been in contact with him for months.
Right, and the last thing, like you said, there is footage, and a guy did reporting on him warming up and practicing before the game in the preseason.
So yes, and then he went AWOL after that. Right.
Yeah, something happened. Ridicule.
Yeah,
and
there's something
like
happened, and that's the part that wouldn't we all love to know. Maybe it was so egregious on the team's part that we'd all understand Brandon Ayuk's behavior. Now, with that said, if there was anybody in his life that he listened to, they would have said, yeah, we get it. You can't stand them, and I can't stand them either. But make sure you show up for those rehab appointments because they still owe you another $40 million in guaranteed money, and you'll get it. But he didn't, and there could be some reasons. He's standing on principle because something was said to him that was so egregious. I don't know. You're right. We've said that all along. There's a lot about this we don't know.
Right. It's two sides that agree that they don't want him and he doesn't want to be there. So what is the fine line of weirdness here? Is it them holding on to him and they say they don't want him?
I don't think so.
Saying he wants to go.
I don't think so. I think the only thing weird to me has been his approach here over the last couple of days, because it has nothing to do with him indicating his football readiness, his desire to play football. Those are the things I think if I were advising him, those are the things I would be communicating. And then I would say, why didn't you show up for OTAs? So you missed that opportunity to force their hand. You get yourself ready for that first day of training camp, and then they'll have to do something. That's me. That's me. I'd be looking for solutions, not going backwards and calling people names.
I definitely would love to see his skills, but hopefully he's listening to you or somebody close to him that's telling him to do that. And yeah, because I would love to really talk about the football, but I called because
but there's no football to talk about right now. All due respect to the few of you that get into the OTA play-by-play. We've got stuff we can talk about, of course, but as long as he keeps putting out videos, I think, it is topical. But you're right. Look, you know me, DC. I'd much rather be talking like we did yesterday about an actual real playoff game that was played. We'll get to do that tomorrow. All right, I got to run. Thanks, DC. Let's go to JYD. JYD, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
All right. Basically, it's like this. I don't know why he would want to come here and play in the first place.
Why?
Certainly because you'll be playing for under a management of a guy who came from the organization that you despise so much, who has a pompous attitude, who brought his pompous attitude to Washington because you can see how he was.
Adam's got a pompous attitude?
He has a pompous
Give me an example.
Look how he almost derailed the McLaurin situation.
Well, he just was doing what he thought was in the best interest of the team.
He brought that pompous attitude, and even to this day, he knows that he could have handled it better, and maybe, and just maybe, his number one wide receiver wouldn't have gotten hurt.
Look, we don't need to go back and relitigate that, but I think there was plenty of blame on both sides to go around. We'll leave it at that.
But when you look at the Shanahan,
but your point's a good one. If he doesn't like Kyle and John and the organization, and it could just be one person he doesn't like, maybe he doesn't like Adam either. But Adam was not in a position, JYD, when he was in San Francisco, to be the bad guy. He was not the general manager. So he may have been the good cop in the bad cop, good cop relationship, for all we know.
That, but see, the Shanahans, it's like this. Like my mom used to say, if you can't get, used to tell us when we was in the yard playing, if you can't get along, stay away from each other.
Right.
And so this is the same thing. Ayuk doesn't like the cup of tea that the 49ers are serving, and the 49ers don't like the cup of tea that he's serving. I see no purpose of them trying to make him to be subservient to them or whatever, and he's like
subservient. He doesn't show up. He doesn't show up. So he's doing nothing for them.
Just go ahead and release the guy.
Why release him?
At the most you're gonna get.
He's not even showing up. He's not showing up. I'm not gonna release him and let him go suit up for a competitor for an entire off season. No chance.
It doesn't matter. Somebody has to be the bigger guy. Show some class. Just go ahead and get rid of the guy.
Your first responsibility as the owner, general manager, and head coach of an organization is to the organization. There are circumstances, I will concede, that you would do something that may not be in the best interest of the organization, but really it would be because you're taking care of somebody that you really are fond of, that's done a lot for you. You've done a lot for them, and there's been a great relationship. But from a competitive standpoint, why would I want to give Brandon Ayuk, if I think he's got talent and something left, to an NFC competitor with plenty of time to get ready for the season?
Nobody is trading for him.
I think you're right.
Nobody's
but
trading for him. He has no value at all.
But you didn't answer the question. Why would it benefit my organization to give him to Washington for 2 extra months or 2.5 extra months to get ready for the upcoming season when I have the ability to give them Brandon Ayuk right before the season begins?
Everybody has him coming here. We don't know that.
Well, you don't think he should want to come here because of Adam Peters and his pompousness.
You like releasing him out in the iCloud. He's for everybody. What up?
Yeah. Good call, JYD. Love you. Lap in DC. Finish it up for us.
Hey, what's up? What's up, Kevin?
What's up, Lap?
I guess a few things, man. We know that he wants to play with Jaden. You know, we believe that he's in shape. You know, I know he's been talking crazy and stuff. You know what I'm saying? And he's not handling it the best.
Did you say we know he's in shape?
The best approach.
Did you say we know he's in shape?
We believe that he's in shape. No, we believe that he's in shape. We believe.
We do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have an opinion on that one way or the other. I wish he'd tell us and show us.
So
that would be important in his messaging.
So
if he's going to make use of these videos, let everybody know that he's really ready to play football and he's interested in playing football.
Yeah,
he hasn't done that yet.
That's true. Yeah, he's not handling it the best, Kevin. And 49ers is petty too. They just need to just come to some agreement, man, and release the guy, man. It's just long overdue. It's just drawn out. A lot of this is his fault, and they have a part to play in it too as well. But if you want to get
they might,
with Jaden,
they might not.
Man, just get it
we
done.
don't know.
Man. Yeah.
I mean, on this is it's such a reminder of the conversations that I had with many of you during the Albert Hainsworth days, during the Donovan McNabb days, and everybody just wanted it over with. But you know what's always interesting about those situations? And Cooley, more than anybody else, used to make me so aware of this. The conversations we're having and the heightened sort of conversations and the disruption that we assume is happening because of these videos typically is not anything inside these buildings. You know, especially without the guy there. They're not giving a lot of thought to it. It's not overrated. Now, it's possible if he shows up for camp, which he should, if he's still on the roster, that they get sick of, watching him, who knows how he'll behave if he's on the field.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask
Sure.
you one question? Yeah. Do you think it'd just be easier just to go with Diggs or Debo, man? Because I still feel Debo can really help us out, bro. I really think it's just last year was just unfair for him. He wanted to play with Jaden. I mean, the season sucked last year. And I think they should consider, especially if he's on the books, you know what I'm saying, for the cap hit this year too, Kevin. So just your thought on that.
Yeah, I don't think
maybe that'd be easier.
I thought Debo was good for this team. I think Debo would be a good fit for the Blau offense because he was a good fit for the Kyle offense. But I also think that maybe Antonio Brown and De'Ami Brown are kind of like, for them, we're good. We don't need to pay Debo, the 10 that he's looking for, the 11 or 12 that he's looking for. And so my guess is that Debo's not coming back. And as far as Diggs goes, this. I think Diggs here for a year would be a good thing. I think that could really be a positive addition. And you could do that virtually right now if he's interested in signing now. He may not be interested until maybe mini camps over. You'll see when these mini camps end. Lap, I got to run. But you'll see when these mini camps end, some of the guys that are hanging out there will start to commit right around the beginning of training camp. Because part of it is they're not thrilled to be, asked to show up for OTAs and then required to show up for minicamp. If they're staying in shape, they just rather would do the deal and show up for training camp. So we'll see. Yeah, the Diggs thing, I mean, I'm in favor of that. Now, the long term and the big upside is still Ayuk. But there's mystery around what that, looks like in reality. The upside is we saw a player at the end of 2023 that was ascending towards, true star number one wide receiver ability. All right. We'll switch subjects to tonight's Game 4 in the Garden next.
What's up, Vic? It's ADD Bonsa, NBA player correspondent. So in my opinion, you changed it a lot in Game 3. How do you keep that momentum? And I seen you were going inside a lot more. Was that your strategy in Game 3?
On the side?
Inside, like inside. The paint.
Yeah. I said the goal is always to go inside. You know, the best shot in the game is an alley-oop. Is the most efficient shot. But teams don't just let you do that. But I think what we've built with this team is that we've got an identity that makes everybody dangerous. And sometimes it'll pay off. And over a season, over a playoff series, we're going to get easy buckets and inside buckets like I did last night.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Victor Wembanyama yesterday. Game 4 tonight in the Garden, 8:30 tip. The Knicks are 2-point favorites.
You know who asked that question, Kev?
What'd you say?
You know who asked that question, right, Kev?
Hold on. Play it again. I was almost going to... Was it Ben?
No.
Oh.
What's up, Vic? It's ADD Bonsa, NBA player
Oh,
correspondent.
no. I was thinking something else I heard online before the show. Who is that?
That was AJ DeBansta.
Oh, it was?
He's the NBA player correspondent for the finals. So he's just asking a bunch of questions at the presser. So he's just getting a little FaceTime with some champions right now, or championship
contenders. He was also
contenders.
at the French Open last week.
He's out and about.
Tiafoe's match. Wembanyama. So the league went back and looked at the foul that was not called. The shove to the head on Jalen Brunson, and they deemed it to not be a flagrant foul. Now listen to this. The reason for it is if it had been deemed a flagrant foul, he would have been on the verge of being suspended from a game with the other flagrants he's accumulated in the postseason. So I don't want to see him suspended from a game. I want to see him play these games. And certainly the NBA does not want him suspended from a game. But that was a flagrant foul. They just didn't deem it to be. Monty McCutcheon, the senior VP of referee development, told ESPN that a foul should have been called on the play, but the league did decide not to upgrade the no call to a flagrant. There you go on that. So I was reading something last night, and I was looking for it before the show, and I couldn't find it, so I can't attribute it. It may have been in the comments section of a story I was reading, seriously, where someone suggested that the Spurs have to go get themselves a center in the offseason. And I said, and I thought to myself, a center? He's the center. But then I thought about it a little bit more. He isn't really fond of playing center offensively. He likes to face the basket. He likes to shoot threes. He likes to play on the perimeter. I think he sees himself, and maybe the Spurs see it the same way, that Wembanyama is more of a small forward, not even a power forward. But he's a 3 or a 4, not a 5. Now, the centers that are available in free agency, Hartenstein's available, Mitchell Robinson's available. It's not, like a banner year for like a true center. I think he needs some size. I think they have to have the ability next year to go big. They don't really have that ability right now. They don't play Cornet with him together. But I just thought that was an interesting comment. And I was like, I've been thinking about this the wrong way. I've been thinking about they got to go out and get a 6'9", 6'10", 4 power forward to put next to him. But actually, maybe what they need is a true center, a Rudy Gobert type. Rudy Gobert's not available, but somebody who truly can only play, on the low post, because it's not his favorite thing. He doesn't mind rolling off a pick and roll and catching a ball and dunking it, on an alley-oop. But he really thinks of himself, watching him, as more of a Kevin Durant type. a guy that can absolutely take you off the dribble on the perimeter and get to the rim, pull up for mid-range, or if you back off, and he doesn't really need anybody to back off defensively because they're not going to block the shot, but he can shoot threes, and he's a good shooter. I mean, he's not just a good shooter for somebody his size. He's got a great stroke. He's a good shooter. But I thought that was I think maybe I've been thinking about this incorrectly in terms of what they need and about, why they don't go to him on the post. It's not the way he plays. It's not the way it doesn't seem like they want him to play. Mike Brown, the head coach of the Knicks, did say yesterday that they've got to get Karl Anthony Towns more touches. And, in essence, what he's saying is we can't have the ball stick with Jalen Brunson as much as it did, because Towns was, 4 for 10 for the game, 0 for 4, just 4 attempts in the fourth quarter. But the Knicks were way slowed down with the ball sticking with Brunson. And that isn't the way it's been since game 3 of the first round series against Atlanta. They were, back to their normal ways of heavy ISO ball for the first 3 games against the Hawks in the first round, and they fell behind 2-1. And then all of a sudden, the Knicks really started to play differently. The ball moved, people moved, and they annihilated teams with incredible offense. So you've got to go, you got to go to Towns more. Towns has to touch the ball more, and I really think Jalen Brunson shouldn't be given the responsibility, especially against Stephon Castle, of bringing the ball up court. I think it's way too much of a physical demand for him. We'll see what happens tonight. The Knicks are 2-point favorites at home tonight. This is a big one. I would say that it's must win for the Knicks in most situations, but I don't know if I really believe that, because I think the Knicks have already proven they're capable of winning in San Antonio. And all of these games could have gone, any way, and if tonight's another game that could go either way and it goes San Antonio's way and it's 2-2, I don't think it's going to make me think that the Knicks can't go back and win game 3 or win a 7th and deciding game if they had to go back to San Antonio for that. I think what would become very apparent if San Antonio wins is we're likely, well, at that point, guaranteed to see 2 more, and maybe, the odds would favor heavily that we're going to see 3 more. I'd love that. This thing gets spread out now. It's tonight in the Garden, and then we got to wait until Saturday night for Game 5 in San Antonio, and then Game 6 isn't until next Tuesday night, and then a 7th and deciding game would be Friday night, June 19th. And every time I say June 19th, I am reminded of one Leonard Bias, June 19th, 1986. So 40 years coming up on the anniversary of his death. All right. Trae Young said something yesterday that was pretty interesting. You'll hear that next. Wizards point guard Trae Young was on Ryan Clark's podcast, The Pivot, and he said a couple of things, one of which was sort of headline worthy. We'll play that second. This was him talking about just the Wizards being tired of losing.
I'm focused on like making sure when I get into the season, I'm ready. I know our team is going to be ready. Like we have young guys that have been through the rebuilding stage now. Like they've went through a lot of losing these last few years, and they're tired of it. You know what I'm saying? As mad as I am of people thinking about me, like my teammates are tired of losing, and I want to be right there with them when we winning. You know what I'm saying? So regardless of what other people are thinking about me, for me, I just got to focus on that. You know what I'm saying? Focus on my teammates. I'm bringing them. I mean, y'all see stuff. They're going to be with me a lot more this summer. I mean, they're going to be a lot this summer. This is my first summer with these young guys, and so it's going to be cool, and that's my main focus with that.
Yeah, everybody's tired of losing, which is why they ultimately traded for Anthony Davis in particular, but him as well. And, they got kind of lucky here getting the first pick, and we're going to end up, 2 weeks from today, we'll actually know who they picked. Because the draft is 2 weeks from last night. It's the 23rd of June. And AJ DeBonsa, man, you can catch him interviewing people at the finals. This was the quote from Trae Young on Ryan Clark's podcast that generated some reaction. Here's what he said about himself.
This is the most slept on I've been in my whole life. Like even when I was in high school, I wasn't this slept on. Like I felt like I could have been top 5 in my class. I should have been top 10. Number 1 point guard, I felt like, but I was number 4. So was I slept on a little bit? Maybe, but this is, it's starting to feel a certain way. But for me, I know it's all, I've learned over the years, there's a lot of recency bias that goes on, especially in media. And I got a podcast too, so I'm not just throwing y'all into all the media. Right. I know what you do, but like I know there's a lot of recency bias that goes in the media, and I know if we start winning, imagine the Wizards as the number 1 team in the East next year. What people are gonna be saying. I can't get caught up in what people are saying now. As mad as it makes me, and what people say about me is not true. And yes, I haven't played very much in a year and a half because of some injuries and a trade and things like that. But trust me, I'm probably just entering my prime. Like the way people talk about me is just funny, and I just can't wait to go out there and play. And I know that's what changes the narrative. So I can't necessarily get caught up in what people think right now. I got to go out there and do it again.
So look, the 2 pieces of it, the most slept on he's been, and he nailed it. It's all, we're living in, especially with sports, it's always recency bias, and he's been hurt. He didn't play that much. I mean, he did play in 2024 and 2025. He played 76 games, averaged 24.2 points per game and 11.6 assists a game, and was an all-star. That was the season before this one, but he was hurt in Atlanta, got traded here, didn't play many games here. So out of sight, out of mind. That's typical. That second part of it, though, when he says, I know if we start winning, imagine the Wizards as the number 1 team in the East next year. What would people be saying? Well, they would be saying, thank God Jalen Brunson and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and who else in the East am I forgetting? Thank God they all got hurt, because that's the only way. And thank God we stayed healthy, and AD played 79 games. Cade Cunningham, he got hurt, was lost for the year. Tatum and Brown's probably going to end up somewhere else anyway. Jaylen Brown, everybody got hurt, and we're the 1 seed. I can't see 1 seed. Cannot see that. And I don't think he was predicting 1 seed. He just said, imagine if, the narrative would be different, because in that moment, in that recency, the bias would be, wow, Trae Young and Anthony Davis and the Wizards are really good. And we slept on Trae Young, and his abilities. I've said this since the trade of Anthony Davis. I can envision Anthony Davis and Trae Young being a good pairing. Trae Young is a really good pick and roll, pick and pop player. He's obviously got great range. You can't, not guard him from, certain places on the floor, which spaces out the floor for you. Like, I see those two veteran players. This is the big if they're on the floor, healthy, playing the mass majority of games next year. I see that being a good pairing. And I know that Trae Young, is one of those guys that is ball dominant, and I don't love it. I said this when they made the trade for Trae Young. I was not a big Trae Young fan in terms of watching him play. A lot of what I don't like about Harden, a lot of what I don't like about Luka, and I'm not putting him in Luka's class. A lot of what, I hate to see Jalen Brunson do is what Trae Young does. Ball dominant, ball sticks with him. But he is a shot maker and a playmaker. He's averaged, double-digit assists in the 3 seasons before he got hurt last year. And he's averaged as much as 29.6 points per game. The dude can score, and he can play make. And Anthony Davis is a really good two-man guy for a guy like Trae Young. And then, you got to put the other pieces in place, and maybe A.J. DeBonce is one of those pieces. Who knows? Maybe it's Darren Peterson. But they've got some good young pieces to put around these guys. And but they got to play. They got to play. I wasn't necessarily thrilled when they made the Trae Young deal, but after they made the Anthony Davis deal, I see the potential of those two playing together and what it could look like if they're both healthy, and what it could look like if, surrounding them, the players that look like they have real potential but haven't played meaningful basketball, the Keyshawn Georges, the Koulibalys, certainly the Alex Sars, the Trey Johnsons. I mean, Trey Johnson off of, the playmaking ability of a Trae Young and the threat on, rolling to the basket from Anthony Davis, spot-up shooter, Trey Johnson, yeah, sign me up for that. Will Riley's development last year, and then what A.J. DeBonce or Peterson could bring, I think it's going to be DeBonce. We'll see. But, yeah, I mean, it's a team with some young talent and then two legitimate all-star players when they play. And that's much more about Anthony Davis than it is Trae Young. There were a lot of comments from players about Trae Young's, because it got tweeted out that this is the most slept on I've been in my whole life. Imagine the Wizards is the number 1 team in the East next year. What are people going to be saying? And Jaylen Brown, Celtics, they gone move the bar, he said. They went and moved the bar. I'll tell you what, man, Trae Young at Oklahoma was an unbelievable scorer. But at the same time, so ball dominant. Back to tonight in the Garden. I think, for the Knicks, the key is offensively, the ball's got to move. It can't stick again. And then defensively, I really think that you've got to put more pressure on their guards defensively. And that's not easy to do because Brunson's not the best defender. And man, Castle and Harper, they get going downhill and it's tough to stop them. But once they get going downhill and the defense is broken down, that's where they just get too many good looks. And I think, the passing from that position, you guard, the perimeter well. Sometimes that's your best post defense. Doesn't necessarily make sense maybe to some of you, but I remember coaches saying the best post defense is how you guard the pass to the post. And if they continue to feed Wembanyama like they did closer to the rim, it's how they guard the perimeter that's even more important, because once he touches it near the rim, you're pretty much done. It's interesting series, man. Each one of these games could have gone either way, and I love the idea of what we might see tonight, because we're not sure what we're going to see tonight. We're not sure. one of the things about Brunson is you would just think that at some point he's going to have a good shooting game. At some point. 12 of 31 in game 1, 7 of 25 in game 2, 11 of 25 better in game 3, but the offense bogged down in game 3 because the ball stuck, and he ended up with 5 turnovers and just 5 assists. Ball's got to get out of his hands when they come with that double. Ball's got to get out of his hands, initially, if he's initiating the offense. It can come back to him with 8 seconds, 7 on the shot clock. But he can't have 9 possessions from the other night where no one else touches the basketball. That can't happen. All right, when we come back, there was some Durante Jones sound from yesterday at the final OTA session that I want to play for you. And also, there was a very interesting conversation with Steph Curry about the greatest players in the history of the game under 6'5", 6'5" or under. Now that's a key height because Michael Jordan was 6'6". The greatest players in the history of the game, 6'5" and under. Steph was asked about that. You'll hear what he said. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Got this from RJ. RJ wrote, Sheehan, wide receiver 2 don't mean much this year. Scheme heavy on tight ends. More important, they got Chig than they get another wide receiver. You know, we've talked about this, that there is a likelihood that there will be more, you know, in the Blau system, more 12 and 13 personnel, more 1 back, 2 tight ends, 1 back, 3 tight ends. And by the way, that makes it really important that Chig's good, but that, you know, also Sinnott finds a role. And maybe that's more of sort of a fullback. Remember, Adam Peters compared him to Kyle Juszczyk when they drafted him back in April of 2024 or whatever it was, April or early May of 2024. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, but you're not turning down another, you know, really good playmaker at wide receiver or anywhere on offense. You know, wide receiver 2 is as much about having another and really maybe a primary stretch the field guy. Look, I like Diggs a lot, and I would really love Diggs on this team, but Diggs' ability to stretch the field isn't what it used to be. I don't think he's a straight possession receiver. I think somebody mentioned that to me. Who mentioned that to me? Oh, I had Joe House on my podcast, and Joe said, look, I think Diggs is much more of a possession receiver now than he is, you know, a scare you deep receiver, vertical threat receiver. And that's where Ayuk comes in. Ayuk is, you know, if you got the Ayuk from 23, he's a true vertical threat. And he'd become your best vertical threat. Terry's a good vertical threat. Don't get me wrong. Terry's good at basically everything he does. But Ayuk is a real separator, you know, a real vertical threat and then a real separator if you got that guy. You know, if that's the guy you ended up getting, who knows what you're going to get. But thanks for that, RJ, because I do get the importance of their tight ends. And, you know, I'm a big Chig Okonkwo fan. He was one of the free agents that I wanted them to target. And I think we're going to see a player that's not played on a good offensive team or with a good quarterback yet. I think he could really blossom into something special. And I think they're excited about Okonkwo. I think they were excited to sign him, and I think they're excited so far about the professionalism, the work ethic, and just what they think he can be. We won't know until the season begins, but, you know, it's very possible that when we get to, you know, September in Philadelphia and week 2 in Dallas, the second most targeted receiver on their team is Okonkwo after Terry. I mean, I'd predict that to be the case right now, that is more likely than not that Okonkwo ends up getting the second most targets on the team. And, you know, then you got Sinnott, you got Bates, and you got Cager, who I know that there is some belief in. So we'll see when we get there. Durante Jones yesterday in the final OTA day of 2026. They've got a mini camp on Monday. Mini camp goes Monday through Wednesday next week. Prediction right now, there won't be a third day of mini camp. They'll send them home after the second day saying, we've accomplished all we wanted to accomplish. Happens a lot. This was our new defensive coordinator talking yesterday, Durante Jones, about getting younger and faster.
A big storyline, Durante, going into kind of the new additions to this defense is younger and faster. That's kind of the narrative we've been talking about. What do you see? Kind of explain the younger and faster that you've seen on the field.
Well, obviously you see guys flying around, and that's just the effort. You know, Coach Q does a great job of the culture that he's built here, but the effort and guys playing lights out and just giving all they got for their teammate. You can see that the brotherhood has been established there and guys playing for one another. And so the younger and faster, I would honestly say, because of the culture that is here, even if you were older, you'll still be giving all you got. It may not be as fast. And we have some older guys, but I like the mindset of you can see the speed on the field.
You know, that answer, I hadn't heard the answer. Max just said he wanted to play it for me. You know, I know that a lot of you don't really care. I know a lot of you don't love him. I know a lot of you think the seat's super warm, if not boiling hot. But people around Dan Quinn in his orbit, they really like him and they really respect him. And what Durante Jones was just asked had nothing to do with Dan Quinn. But he talked about just the effort, and going back to when he and Adam Peters were hired, and they kept talking about the collaboration and, having aligned visions. I think that's the way they described it. It was all about finding the traits that they both agreed on. And one of them was, we want guys who, whether they're talented or not, they're competitors and they are high motor, high energy players. And they have had that. I don't think that, with the exception of the Minnesota game last year. The Minnesota game was a disaster all the way around. But, I can't say that I could accuse them of not giving effort. Now, they didn't look coordinated defensively last year for sure. And obviously they were without all their best players for much of the season on both sides of the ball. But I'd be hard-pressed to be critical of their effort. People say, well, that's a given. They're professionals. No, it's not. We've seen plenty of teams bail. And that's why that Minnesota game was troubling, because that was the one game in which it looked like, injuries don't explain everything. And they didn't that day. This was Durante Jones on the green dot, the player that will have the green dot, the headset, the communication, helmet communication with the head coach, and him talking about Sonny Styles.
Not so much as it used to be in the past. For us, pretty much all the linebackers have the green dots because of the communication at practice. But nowadays, they have that ability to have the green dot in college. You're going to see more and more college athletes coming to this level with comfort level of hearing a call, hearing the communication, and then echoing and giving that out to their teammates. So because of where he's come from and his experience, it's been smooth as it can be.
Talking about Sonny Styles. And then lastly, this was Durante Jones talking about the challenges he is facing as a first-time defensive coordinator.
Challenges, I would say, Coach Q, Dan Quinn has been very supportive with resources. I've been using him as a resource. So the challenge really with the challenge, I think the experience has been great because you're constantly learning. And in this profession, that's what we want to do. So it's very similar to experience in the past. But challenges is just more so getting us online. When you talk about making sure you have 11 on the field, making sure the guys are lining up right with the right fronts, getting the calls, getting the communication across defensively. So everything matters. So before we even run a play, it's the things that's leading up to that play. Elite communication, guys looking at the situation. So all that kind of, dials in to before we run like a cover two, what is our fundamentals, what our techniques look like, the communication pre-snap and post-snap. And so that's all part of it. So I wouldn't say it's challenging. It's just you're looking at a wider spectrum of things.
This guy's been around a lot of people. I mean, Brian Flores, Mike Zimmer, Marvin Lewis, Vance Joseph. He's been around a lot of guys. That answer, I swear to God, every year, especially this time of year or very early in the season, especially when you have new players or a new coordinator, they always will tell you that we just got to get the play into the huddle and get out of the huddle on time and get to the line of scrimmage and snap the ball. It's like the thing that I think, most fans just assume isn't very hard, but with new terminology and with players that are young and players who are playing together for the first time in packages and sub packages, it's about being organized, and as coaches, the first impression you don't want, people to have is, oh my God, they looked disorganized. Now, if you look disorganized, more likely than not, the play isn't going to go well. You can be organized and the play not be great. The production not be great. But I'm telling you, for coaches, it's like the first thing you see, and I got to make sure that the play's in on time, it's called accurately in the huddle, we've got the right package for the play that I called, and then if it's offense, the ball gets snapped on time. It's more of a challenge than I think we think, especially with new players and young players in particular. Because I do remember how important it was with Dwayne Haskins. The last, Jaden was a big part of being a rookie year, and then we heard some of that with Scott Turner, with Cliff Kingsbury. But I do remember it was like with Dwayne in his first start, his first start was against Minnesota on a Thursday night, I think it was. And I remember it was all week. It was like, just got to get the play in. We got to get it called correctly, get to the line of scrimmage on time, and get the snap off so that we're not burning timeouts throughout the game. And they didn't. I remember the performance wasn't, maybe it was Buffalo. What was Dwayne Haskins? I think he came in against Minnesota on a Thursday night and then started for the first time at Buffalo. I think I may be right about that. I'll look it up during the next break. All right, I wanted to play something for you and get your reaction because this is, one of those bar room and bar stool debates. So Steph Curry was on Gilbert Arenas' podcast, and Gilbert Arenas and Steph Curry started talking about the greatest players in the history of the game, 6'5" or shorter. 6'5" obviously is the number you start at, because if you start at 6'6", the conversation starts and ends with Jordan. So you got to get to 6'5", and then you can start talking about the greatest players. And really, you're talking about the greatest smaller players of all time. So here was the back and forth between Gil and Steph Curry on this topic.
Are you the best point guard ever?
Yes. I have to, yes. It's me and Magic. That's the conversation.
I'm thinking about the 90s growing up. There was nobody trying to be a 6'9" point guard, right? I mean, it just. But I can witness and watch every kid trying to be Curry. You know what I mean? So it's like the influence that you really have on the game from the position as a player. I look at the stats and say, okay, Magic then Curry. When I look at the kids and I watch AAU, it's like, nah.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously I have to answer it that way, but I really feel like, to your point, like Magic's resume is ridiculous. Yeah. Like, all right, so the fact that we're even having that conversation is it's a place I never thought I'd be in. But Magic, like that's a lofty resume to shoot for, right? So I'm still going. Let's see what happens.
Okay, that wasn't exactly the soundbite that I was looking for, because it was more about 6'5" and under. Look, if we're talking about the greatest point guard of all time, that's a different conversation than the greatest smaller player of 6'5" and under. There was a part of that conversation that focused in on that. So I'll just ask you, who's the greatest player in the history of the game, 6'5" or shorter? So you can't include Jordan in that conversation. And it's not just a point guard conversation because it's more about a smaller man conversation. And 6'5" is not small. When we think about small, I think we think of 6'3" or shorter. But we'll stick with 6'5" or shorter. Who's the greatest player? Because, by the way, when it comes to point guard, Magic would be the greatest point guard in the history of the game for me. I think Magic is arguably the second best player of all time behind Jordan and ahead of others, including LeBron. But Magic's the greatest point guard and the most transformational player of a generation, because it was the first time we ever saw it, a 6'9" point guard. But who's the greatest player 6'5" or shorter in the history of the game? I'm going to give you my list. It's going to be a top 3. All right. I'm going to leave out some of the other names that are in contention, but at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980, I want the best players 6'5" or shorter in the history of the game. Your number one, Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So I got a little bit confused and I messed Max up. He pulled from the Steph Curry Arenas podcast, which is actually what I sent him. But what I read and what I thought I was sending him were two different things. Reggie Miller was on the Dan Patrick show, and they had a conversation about the best players ever under 6'5". And so if we say 6'5" and under, then Oscar Robertson is the greatest 6'5" player in the history of the game. So we'll say under 6'5". 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. So we're really talking about guards. 6'4" and, essentially 6'4" and under 6'5". Who's the greatest of all time? For me, number one's easy. It's Steph. I would take Steph number one. He is, for me, the greatest combined shooter and ball handler in one body in the history of the league. And he is 6'3". Steph Curry's number one on that list. And then number two, I think would be easy for me as well. It would be Isaiah. It would be Zeke. Isaiah Thomas would be number two on that list. I still think that Isaiah, had he played in the era of today, he'd be an absolute lethal three-point shooter. And he had the range. Now, he didn't we had Randy Whitman on the show last week, and Randy, talked about Isaiah being the best player he's ever played with or coached, because he's been around some great players in his playing career. Dominique Wilkins, college career, Isaiah Thomas, and then coaching, guys like Garnett, coaching guys like Wall. And he said quickly, when I said, who's the best player you've ever been around as a player or a coach? And he said, it's Isaiah, it's Zeke. And I said, what about Isaiah as a guy that could have been Steph Curry during this era? And he said, Curry's a better shooter. Curry, no one's ever shot the ball like Curry. We never saw Isaiah have that opportunity. There was a three-point shot during Isaiah's career, but you didn't shoot it a lot, and you certainly didn't shoot it from 30 feet or and out. But Isaiah had that kind of range. He did. So Isaiah would be on that list for me in terms of the top two. After that, it gets difficult. It gets difficult because there are guys, like Allen Iverson, like John Stockton. Jerry West was 6'3". He's the logo, for crying out loud. So he'd have to be in consideration. But I think for me, my number three all time at 6'4" and smaller would be Dwayne Wade. It's tough to come up with, because I think Curry and Zeke are easy. I think Curry and Isaiah Thomas are easy. But you got to consider West. You got to consider AI. You got to consider even a guy like Chris Paul. Even a guy like Russell Westbrook. Steve Nash. But Dwayne Wade would be my number three. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. The best player ever under 6'5". Scott in Germantown, go ahead. Scott, you there? Let's go to Anthony. Anthony, go ahead.
Kevin, real quick before I answer the question.
Yeah.
I know what your boy Kenny Atkinson was suffering from when his analytics double and triple down. And I'm sure you and some of the listeners can relate to this. He was on the blackjack shoe from hell. And,
yeah.
And he had, in order to play, there was no miscue entry. And in order to play two hands, he had to double up his bet. So instead of just walking away, he stayed there and got his head beat in.
Let me tell you something. When I'm on a bad shoe, I'm not doubling up. But I'm hanging around. I'm waiting for the next shoe. You know what's so funny about a bad shoe, though, Anthony, is that And I'll tell you a quick story. Cooley was in town a few weeks ago. We were both in a wedding together, part of a wedding together, and he stayed with me. And I don't think I shared this, but he didn't have a flight until late Sunday night, I think, or no, it was early Monday morning. And he said, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "I don't know. You want to go to the MGM?" So we went to the MGM and we sat down for 2 hours or so, and played cards. And we play the exact same way. We play basic blackjack rules, and he got every card and I didn't get one. He walked off the table with, let's just say, a lot of money, and I walked off down. So sometimes it's just the seat, and it's not the shoe. But yeah, sometimes the shoe's bad for everybody. But go ahead. Give me your best player under 6'5".
And he kept saying to himself, "It's got to change. It's got to change." But no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
But as far as the GOAT conversation goes, see, this is the thing that gets me. We're picking nits because what's the hard and fast criteria? And also,
who would you take? You're starting a team and you need a guard. Who are you taking?
Oh man, see. One of the problems is the conversation always leans towards offense. We never consider defense. So
I did with Wade.
Right, but you had him at number 3. So anybody below 6'5" to start a team with, man, that's a straight up coin flip. But for the sake of the conversation, I'll go with Wade because he plays defense.
Yeah.
He's just as effective on the offensive end as the other players. Although he gets it in a different manner, he still gets it. But the only
reason Steph has to be the guy for me is that he changes everything about the way your team gets defended. The floor with Steph on it has never been stretched so much from a spacing standpoint, because you have to guard him basically the moment he crosses half court. And then, oh, by the way, to have Klay Thompson on his team as well, it just made things so much easier. Wade didn't have that ability. But the reason I considered Wade was that he was a phenomenal two-way player at 6'4" and clutch.
Right. And that's the point, because Curry can get the points, but just like San Antonio was going at Brunson,
the
same thing happens to Curry. They go straight at him. So people tend to forget basketball is a two-way game. There's offense and there's defense. So for that reason, I would go with Curry. I would go with
you go with Wade. All right.
Wade.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah. Appreciate it. I'd be surprised if anybody else had Wade as number 1. Because to me, like thinking about players 6'4" under, I immediately think of Curry and I think of Isaiah, and then I think of AI and I think of Stockton and I think of Nash, and especially when you're thinking smaller players, because Wade was 6'4", and a boxy kind of at times 6'4". And a strong 6'4", but Jerry West is the frickin' logo, and he was 6'3". I didn't even mention Maravich. Kevin in Arlington, go ahead.
You just stole my thunder. I was going to say the logo, Jerry West, who I definitely think he revolutionized shooting in the game. Have you seen the logo, the new documentary on Jerry's life?
I have not. I heard it's good.
It's unbelievable, Kevin. And it's got people like Steph and Magic and Michael talking about him and his legacy. Obviously, not just as a player, but more so as an executive in terms of their more recent memories. But anyway, it was riveting, and it brought back a lot of things. Because when I first started watching Hoops, West was still playing, and they got that championship in the early 70s after so many near misses. But
it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy that I don't have West in the top 3. because we were talking about Wade being a good defensive player. But you know, Kevin, and I've talked a lot about this with Tommy over the years, when I go back and I watch some of those games, especially from the 60s, not so much from the 70s, more so from the 60s, man, they just didn't guard. There just wasn't
And
a
their
lot of
athleticism was limited, right? They weren't as athletic.
It's just a different game. I mean, like I think I watched one of the West versus Celtics games, and I swear to you, I didn't see him go left the entire game. It was almost like they knew he was going right. They knew he wouldn't go left. They tried to force him left. It didn't matter. And he still got what he got. But I don't know. Like I understand and I can appreciate West, no doubt. I feel like he should have probably been in my top 3, but I just gave you the 3 players that I would have probably started a team with.
Sure. Last thing, I don't know if this is true, but in the great movie Hoosiers, the character Jimmy, that's West. Practicing in his backyard and just was a gunner who had no peers. So anyway, thanks for
All right, thanks, Kev. Appreciate it. Paul in Silver Spring, finish it up for us. Best player ever under 6'5".
Hey, how you doing today?
Good.
You changed your criteria a little, so I'm going to qualify. First of all, Steph Curry, I definitely put number 1. First of all, as a person, if you've read much about this guy, even when he was in high school, he's only drafted by one, not drafted, excuse me,
Recruited,
scholarship
ended up
from
at Davidson.
No one else gives him one.
Right.
The guy's an incredible shooter. He does everything. But second, now you change the criteria, would be Pete Maravich. Pete Maravich was so far ahead of his time. He was a magician with the ball, and he can play defense too, but he changed an entire game. Today, if he could play like that, he'd be pretty much even with Steph Curry in my book.
Look, I mean, Maravich, in the ball handling, the wizard, the wizard way in which he handled the ball and the way he scored, and obviously one of the greatest college scorers in the history of the game for sure. Thanks for the call. Appreciate that. By the way, Reggie Miller, when he was asked by Dan Patrick about who he'd take, he said Steph Curry over Dwayne Wade. So he had Curry and then Wade number 2 in terms of the greatest players under 6'5". I'd be hard. I just can't imagine not having a choice to start a team and you got to pick a player under 6'5". I can't imagine not picking Steph Curry and knowing what you're going to get with him. All right, that'll do it for today. Chris is next.